Imagine a vast and war-hardened empire, one that has conquered star systems, subjugated countless species, and spread its influence across the galaxy like an unstoppable force of nature. The Xilari Dominion, feared and revered, had never known defeat. Their fleets darkened the skies of entire planets, their soldiers were bred for war, and their technology surpassed most civilizations by centuries. When they set their sights on a new world, resistance was futile. But then, they made a fatal mistake. They turned their gaze toward a small, unassuming planet on the outer edges of the galaxy. A blue and green world, teeming with life, but primitive, in comparison to the mighty Xilari. This world was called Earth. The Xilari believed they had found an easy conquest, another species to crush beneath their boots. What they didn't realize was that humans were unlike anything they had ever faced before. At first, the invasion seemed like a foregone conclusion. The Xilari warships entered Earth's orbit with no opposition, their energy weapons charged, ready to annihilate any resistance. They broadcast a single message to the planet, one that had echoed across countless conquered worlds before: surrender, or be destroyed. In most cases, the message was enough. Entire civilizations had laid down their arms at the mere sight of the Dominion's fleet. But humanity was different. There was no submission, no desperate plea for mercy. Instead, there was defiance. The humans didn't surrender. They retaliated, with everything they had. And in doing so, they taught the galaxy's most feared conquerors a lesson they would never forget. The Xilari were not prepared for what came next. Their initial scans of Earth had revealed primitive technology, chemical-propelled projectiles, rudimentary space travel, and a civilization seemingly fragmented by political and cultural differences. It should have been an effortless conquest, but the humans fought back with an intensity that defied all logic. The Xilari's first wave of ground troops landed in major population centers, expecting swift victories. Instead, they found themselves engaged in brutal urban warfare, unlike anything they had ever encountered. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not break under pressure, did not surrender when overwhelmed. They used their cities as battlegrounds, their infrastructure as weapons. Civilians fought alongside soldiers. Guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and psychological warfare turned every street into a death trap for the invaders. The Xilari, who had spent millennia perfecting traditional military strategies, found themselves outmatched not by superior firepower, but by sheer human resilience and unpredictability. And then, there was the adaptability. Unlike other species, humans learned quickly. Every battle lost only made them stronger. Every captured piece of Xilari technology was studied, reverse-engineered, and repurposed. Within weeks, human scientists had developed countermeasures for the Dominion's most advanced weapons. Hackers infiltrated Xilari systems, turning their own technology against them. The Xilari, accustomed to dominating lesser races, found themselves struggling against an enemy that refused to follow the rules of war. The humans did not fight for territory or resources. They fought for survival. And that made them more dangerous than any species the Xilari had ever faced. The first real shock came when the Xilari fleet, stationed in low orbit, suffered unexpected losses. Human fighter jets, retrofitted with scavenged alien technology, launched coordinated assaults against the invaders. They were outgunned, outclassed, and yet they managed to cripple Xilari capital ships with strategies that no Xilari commander could predict. Kamikaze tactics, electronic warfare, and sheer recklessness turned the tide of battle. The Xilari, who had always relied on numerical and technological superiority, were now facing an enemy that thrived on chaos. For the first time in recorded history, the Xilari Dominion experienced something it had never known before: fear. As the battles raged on, the Dominion's high command grew increasingly desperate. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. Conquests were meant to be swift, efficient, and absolute. But Earth refused to fall. The humans had united in a way no other species had. Old rivalries, national borders, and political differences were set aside. Every nation on Earth pooled its resources, its knowledge, its people. Scientists, engineers, strategists, all worked tirelessly to counter the invaders. Resistance cells operated in occupied territories, striking at key Xilari installations and vanishing without a trace. The Dominion's greatest warriors, trained to crush entire civilizations, found themselves hunted by an enemy they had severely underestimated. The turning point came when the Zalari attempted to deploy their ultimate weapon, planetary bombardment. It was a tactic that had never failed before. Reduce the surface to ash, erase the resistance from existence, and claim the world as their own. But just as the first wave of bombardments began, something unprecedented happened. The Zalari ships were hacked mid-operation. Their targeting systems were overridden. Their own weapons were turned against them. Earth's satellites, once considered primitive, had been weaponized in ways the Zalari had never anticipated. The humans had learned how to fight in space, and they had done it in record time. Within hours, entire Zalari warships began crashing to the surface, their own firepower used against them. It was at this moment that the Zalari realized they were not facing a species that could be conquered. They were facing a species that, when pushed to the brink, became something terrifying, something unstoppable. They had made the mistake of assuming humanity was weak because they lacked advanced technology. But what they failed to understand was that humanity's greatest weapon was not their machines, but their minds, their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to fight even when all seemed lost. And as the Zalari High Command watched their once invincible fleet burn, they came to a chilling realization. Humanity was not just another civilization to be conquered. They were a force of nature, and they had just declared war. The Zalari High Command, for the first time in millennia, faced a crisis they could not comprehend. Every strategic model, every simulation, every predictive algorithm they had relied on had failed to account for one simple truth. Humans did not break. Instead of shattering under superior firepower, they adapted. Instead of surrendering when overwhelmed, they retaliated. And worst of all, they learned. Fast. The war was no longer about subjugation. It was now a desperate struggle for survival. Not for humanity, but for the Zalari themselves. Desperation led the Zalari to deploy new tactics. They launched precision strikes against Earth's key infrastructures, hoping to cripple the resistance by destroying supply chains, communication networks, and leadership hubs. In previous conquests, these strikes had been devastating. Cut off from food, water, and power, most civilizations collapsed within days. But once again, humanity defied all logic. When power grids went down, humans built improvised energy sources. When supply lines were cut, they resorted to underground networks, guerrilla farming, and self-sufficient survival tactics. Instead of growing weaker, they became more self-reliant. Cities turned into fortresses, civilians became soldiers, and every setback only fueled their determination. The Zalari then attempted biological warfare, a strategy that had proven effective against countless species in the past. They engineered airborne pathogens designed to target human physiology, expecting entire populations to be wiped out within weeks. But this plan, too, failed spectacularly. Humanity's history of disease, pandemics, and medical advancements had forged a species uniquely prepared for biological threats. Even as the first wave of infections spread, human scientists worked tirelessly to counteract them. Within days, vaccines were distributed through underground medical networks. In a stunning display of defiance, human hackers even managed to breach Zalari communication channels, broadcasting a chilling message across the Dominion's fleet. You think we are weak. You think we will fall like the others. You do not understand what you have unleashed. We do not fear extinction. We were forged by it. The psychological toll on the Zalari was immense. For a species that had known nothing but victory, the realization that they were losing, to a species they had deemed primitive, shook them to their core. Morale plummeted. Rumors spread through the ranks of an unstoppable human force, of soldiers who fought even when mortally wounded, of entire cities that refused to be conquered no matter how much destruction was wrought upon them. Zalari commanders, once arrogant and assured of victory, now hesitated. Every mission was a gamble, every battle a potential catastrophe. They were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted, and then the humans went on the offensive in a move that defied every precedent. Human forces launched coordinated strikes against Zalari outposts, not just on Earth, but beyond. Captured alien vessels were reverse-engineered, their technology repurposed for counter-invasions. Human pilots, now trained in interstellar combat, led daring raids against Dominion supply lines. Orbital stations that had once belonged to the Zalari were seized and converted into human strongholds. The war was no longer just about defending Earth. Humanity had declared a new objective: to take the fight to the enemy. What shocked the Zalari even more was the sheer unpredictability of human warfare. While Dominion forces relied on rigid hierarchies and strict battle doctrines, human commanders encouraged innovation and independent strategy. Small strike teams operated with near-complete autonomy, adapting to battlefield conditions in ways the Zalari could not counter. Suicide missions turned into unexpected victories. Every defeat seemed only to fuel human ingenuity. The Dominion's war machine, once thought to be invincible, was now crumbling under the weight of its own outdated tactics. The Zalari High Command, now in full crisis mode, made a decision they had never considered before. They attempted diplomacy. It was an act born not out of honor, but out of necessity. They needed to stop the humans before the war escalated any further. A delegation was sent, offering a ceasefire. They expected hesitation, negotiations, conditions. Instead, humanity's response was brutally simple: no peace, no surrender. You started this war. We will finish it. It was then that the Zalari realized the true horror of their mistake. They had not merely engaged an enemy. They had awoken a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. A force that did not seek conquest, did not hunger for power, but once provoked, would stop at nothing until total victory was achieved. The Zalari had thought themselves the galaxy's apex predators. But they had just learned the hard way. The real apex predator was humanity. Panic spread through the Zalari Dominion like wildfire. For the first time in their history, they were not merely losing a war, they were being hunted. Every outpost, every stronghold, every fleet that had once been a symbol of their supremacy was now a target. Humanity had gone beyond mere survival. They had become an unstoppable force, relentless in their pursuit of retribution. The war was no longer about Earth's defense. It was about ensuring that no species would ever dare threaten them again. The Zalari, in a last-ditch effort to turn the tide, deployed their most advanced war machines, planet-destroying dreadnoughts, swarms of automated battle drones, and genetically engineered super-soldiers bred for one purpose: total annihilation of the human race. Against any other species, this would have been the end. But humanity was unlike any species they had ever encountered. The moment the Zalari escalated, humans adapted once again. The stolen Zalari technology they had repurposed was now being modified beyond recognition. Weapons originally designed for planetary subjugation were transformed into tools of precision and devastation. Earth's military strategists, fueled by desperation and vengeance, developed countermeasures faster than the Zalari could comprehend. Human special forces, operating deep behind enemy lines, executed high-risk missions with terrifying efficiency. Key Zalari command stations were infiltrated, their databases raided, their strategic plans exposed and countered before they could be executed. The Zalari homeworld, once thought to be untouchable, became the ultimate target. The idea of an alien species reaching the heart of their empire was unthinkable. And yet, human forces were already on their way. The first human attack on Zalari Prime was surgical, precise, and devastating. The Zalari fleet, already stretched thin trying to contain human resistance, was caught off guard. Elite human strike teams, utilizing both stolen and self-developed technology, bypassed planetary defenses and launched devastating strikes against key infrastructure. The Dominion's leadership, so used to dictating terms from the safety of their capital, now found themselves in the same position as the countless civilizations they had once subjugated, helpless and afraid. The war had come to their doorstep, so Zalari desperately attempted to rally their forces, to make a final stand. But it was too late. Their empire was collapsing from within. Entire colonies, seeing the futility of further resistance, revolted. Zalari generals, once loyal to the Dominion, abandoned their posts, unwilling to face an enemy that had proven time and time again that surrender was not an option. What had once been the most feared force in the galaxy was now a broken, scattered remnant of its former self, and then humanity delivered the final blow. A message, broadcast across the remnants of the Zalari fleet, simple and clear: the war is over. Your empire is no more. There will be no peace treaties, no negotiations, no mercy. You brought this upon yourselves. The Zilari Dominion, the once mighty conquerors of worlds, ceased to exist. Their fleets were dismantled, their war machines reduced to scrap. The few survivors who remained were left with a single haunting truth. Humanity had not merely defeated them. They had erased them from history, and the rest of the galaxy had been watching. The lesson was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They were not to be threatened. They were not prey. They were the storm, the force that turned conquerors into the conquered. And from that day forward, one universal truth spread across the stars, a warning whispered in the darkest corners of the galaxy: never start a war with humans. The fall of the Zilari Dominion sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For centuries, they had been the undisputed rulers of countless worlds, their names spoken in fear. But now, they were nothing more than a cautionary tale, a grim warning of what happened when you underestimated humanity. The once mighty conquerors had been reduced to refugees, scattered remnants of a broken empire. And yet, even in their ruins, they were not the only ones afraid. The rest of the galaxy watched in silent horror, realizing the true danger that had been unleashed. The humans had not just won a war, they had proven something far more terrifying. They could not be conquered. They could not be broken. And worst of all, they did not forgive. The great galactic powers, once confident in their own strength, now faced an uncomfortable reality. The humans, once seen as insignificant, were now the most unpredictable force in the universe. They had transformed from an isolated species into a galactic superpower in a matter of years, and they had done it through war, through fire and blood. No treaties, no compromises, no mercy. Now, the question on every leader's mind was the same. What would the humans do next? Would they seek revenge against all who had once viewed them as weak? Would they expand their newfound military might beyond the ruins of the Zilari? Or had they learned to crave war itself? Across the stars, uneasy alliances were formed. Empires that had once been enemies now shared a common fear. If humanity could defeat the Zilari, the greatest conquerors the galaxy had ever known, then who could stand against them? Some sought to understand humanity, sending envoys, ambassadors, and spies to learn their secrets. Others, however, sought a different path. They believed there was only one way to ensure their survival: to strike first, to eliminate the humans before they became unstoppable. And so, in the shadows of the galactic core, a coalition was born. A secret alliance of species, united by a single, desperate goal: the eradication of humanity before it was too late. They called themselves the Accord. Their plan was as audacious as it was ruthless. Humanity was strong, yes, but they had weaknesses. They were new to interstellar politics, still adjusting to life beyond their own solar system. Their technological advancements, while impressive, were built upon stolen Zilari designs, and perhaps most importantly, they still carried the fatal flaw of all young civilizations: arrogance. The humans had never known defeat on a galactic scale. They had only ever fought in self-defense. What would happen if they were the ones caught off guard? The Accord made their first move with cold precision: sabotage. Human trade routes, newly established in the wake of their victory, began to suffer unexplained failures. Key research stations studying Zilari technology were destroyed in accidents. Colonists on newly claimed worlds disappeared without a trace. Humanity, still recovering from their war with the Zilari, struggled to identify the enemy, but the Accord was just getting started. The real strike came when humanity was least prepared: a coordinated attack, striking simultaneously across multiple systems. Earth's colonies were bombarded, their fleets ambushed in deep space. Orbital defense platforms, hastily constructed after the Zilari War, were overwhelmed before they could react. The humans had faced war before, but never like this. This was not a brute force invasion like the Zilari had attempted. This was calculated, precise. The Accord fought like humans had in the past, using sabotage, deception, and overwhelming numbers. And for the first time in their history, humanity found itself outmatched. As the fires of war engulfed the colonies, a grim realization settled in. This was no mere conflict. This was an extermination. The Accord was not interested in conquest or diplomacy. They did not seek negotiation. They had learned from the Zalari's mistake. There would be no second chances. Humanity was to be wiped out before it could become an even greater threat. And so, the battle for survival began again. But this time, it was different. This time, humanity was not fighting to defend a single world. They were fighting to keep their species from being erased forever. Humanity had faced war before. They had faced extinction before. But never like this. The Accord struck with terrifying efficiency, cutting deep into human territory before Earth's forces could even mount a proper defense. Entire fleets were ambushed before they could launch, their ships torn apart by enemy weapons that seemed eerily familiar. Stolen Zalari technology, modified and improved. The colonies, which had once been symbols of human expansion, were now war zones. The Accord had done their research. They knew how humanity fought. They knew how humanity adapted. And this time, they planned to leave no survivors on the outskirts of human space. The planet Arcadia burned. It had been one of the newest human settlements, a beacon of hope for a species still recovering from war. Now, it was a graveyard. The Accord had struck without warning, bombarding the planet's surface. Before launching ground invasions, the defenders fought with everything they had, but they were outgunned, outnumbered. Civilians who had fled into underground bunkers were hunted down one by one. The message was clear. There would be no mercy. But the Accord had made a crucial mistake. They believed humanity would break, that after suffering so many losses, after watching their people slaughtered, they would surrender. What they failed to understand was that humans had never known peace. Their history was built on conflict, on wars that had shaped them into the brutal survivors they were. The Accord thought they had delivered a killing blow. Instead, they had awakened something far worse. On Earth, the news of Arcadia's fall was met with grief, but not fear, not hesitation. Humanity had already learned the lesson the Zalari had failed to grasp. This was not a war for survival. This was a war for revenge. The Accord had struck first, but they had no idea what was coming for them. The first retaliation came not from the fleets, but from the shadows. Human operatives trained in the brutal tactics of asymmetric warfare infiltrated Accord territory. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the best humanity had to offer: elite strike teams, cyber warfare specialists, and deep cover agents who had been gathering intelligence since the first attacks. The Accord thought they had the advantage of secrecy. They were wrong. One by one, key Accord leaders began to vanish. High-ranking officials were assassinated in their own chambers, their security systems hacked by human AI. Military supply depots exploded in coordinated strikes, cutting off entire fleets from their resources. The same sabotage tactics the Accord had used against humanity were now being turned against them. Only this time, it was personal. And then, the true counterattack began. The humans had spent years studying Zalari technology, reverse engineering it, improving it. But what they unleashed now was something entirely new. Weapons that had never been seen before in the galaxy. Adaptive energy cannons that adjusted mid-battle to penetrate enemy shields. Stealth ships that could phase out of enemy sensors. Autonomous war drones capable of rewriting their combat protocols in real time. The Accord had thought they were dealing with the same humans who had defeated the Zalari. But in reality, they were fighting something far worse. A humanity that had learned, that had evolved, that had turned war into an art form. The tide of battle shifted rapidly. Human fleets, which had once been struggling to hold the line, now pushed forward. The Accord had relied on their superior numbers and strategy, but neither mattered anymore. Humanity no longer fought for survival. They fought for vengeance, and they would not stop until the Accord was nothing more than a memory. As the first Accord worlds fell to human forces, a new message was broadcast across the stars. A warning, spoken in the same cold, merciless tone that humanity had once sent to the Zalari: "You should have left us alone." The galaxy had feared the Zalari once. They had feared their conquests, their might, their domination. But now, the Zalari were gone, and something far worse had taken their place. Humanity was no longer the prey. They were the storm. And the Accord was about to learn, just as the Zilari had before them. What happened when you made the mistake of going to war with humans? The accord was unraveling. What had begun as a carefully planned extermination had turned into a desperate fight for survival. The humans had turned their own tactics against them, striking with the precision of a scalpel and the brutality of a hammer. Key supply lines had collapsed, command centers had been wiped out, and now, for the first time, the accord was on the defensive. Their fleets, once a symbol of power, were now shattered remnants, retreating deeper into their own territory. And yet, the worst was still to come. Humanity had learned from the Zilari War that simply defeating an enemy was not enough. The Zilari had been given a chance to surrender, to end the war before total destruction. They had refused, and humanity had erased them from history. The Accord had made the same mistake, believing they could force humanity into submission. Now, they were learning a far more terrifying lesson. Humanity did not believe in half measures. They did not just win wars. They ended them across Accord space. Panic spread like wildfire. Planets that had once been fortresses were now evacuation zones, their leaders fleeing as human warships appeared in their skies. The Accord's most powerful military bases, once thought to be impenetrable, were reduced to ruins in a matter of hours. Human ships, outfitted with technology never before seen in the galaxy, moved with terrifying efficiency. They struck hard, fast, and without hesitation. There was no diplomacy, no negotiation. The humans did not seek peace. They sought retribution on the Accord homeworld. The last remnants of their leadership gathered in desperation. They had once believed themselves to be the architects of the galaxy, guiding its fate from the shadows. Now, they were hunted, powerless against an enemy they had so arrogantly underestimated. They sent desperate transmissions to any species willing to help, pleading for intervention. But no one answered. The rest of the galaxy had learned its lesson. The Zilari had once been the most feared species in the stars, until humanity had wiped them from existence. No one wanted to be next. And then, Earth's final message came. This is your last chance. There will be no peace, no surrender. Only one of us will walk away from this. Faced with total annihilation, the Accord made one final desperate move. They unleashed their last secret weapon, a planet-sized warship, a remnant of an ancient civilization long before their time. It had been hidden away, a relic of a forgotten age, something even they had feared to use. But now, they had no choice. The warship, armed, with weapons capable of reducing entire solar systems to dust, was activated and sent on a direct course toward Earth. It was a last act of defiance, a final attempt to remind humanity that they were not invincible. The Accord knew they could not win. But if they could take Earth with them, if they could strike at the heart of their enemy, then perhaps they could leave a scar deep enough to be remembered. Perhaps they could remind the galaxy that humans could still bleed. The ship arrived in Sol system, its weapons charging, preparing to unleash destruction on a scale never before seen. But what it found waiting was not a desperate, panicked humanity. What it found was something far worse. Humanity had already anticipated this. The moment the war had begun, they had known that their enemies would come for Earth. And they had prepared accordingly. As the warship moved into firing range, the sky around it ignited. Massive human war fleets, hidden within the asteroid belt, emerged like predators closing in on their prey. Planetary defense systems, using technology reverse-engineered from the ruins of the Zilari, activated with pinpoint precision. The Accord's greatest weapon had become nothing more than a target. And in a single coordinated strike, it was obliterated before it could fire a single shot. The war was over. The Accord, the once mighty coalition that had sought to end humanity, no longer existed. Their planets lay in ruin, their fleets scattered, their people left to whisper in the dark about the nightmare they had unleashed. And humanity, victorious once again, sent a final message across the galaxy. This is the last warning. Never come for us again. The lesson had been carved into history. The galaxy would never forget. Humanity had not just survived. They had become something else entirely. A force that could not be conquered, could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped. They were no longer just another species in the stars. They were something far greater. They were the reckoning. Please subscribe my channel for more interesting videos. Thanks.